Hello, MJ Klemenko here, psychotherapist and life coach. I do online counseling and in-office counseling here in California. Tonight I'd like to talk about money. Yes, there are three things that couples argue about: kids, jobs, and money. They argue about jobs because one or the other or both of them don't want to hear about the other person's job, and then the other person feels mad because they want to talk about their job. And kids, that's pretty obvious. But money is very complicated. Um, I'll start with dating. If you're going out with someone, I know young people don't date anymore, they do something else, but if you're going out with someone, uh, if you want them to be your friend, then each person should pay. If you have a romantic interest in someone, then you should, well, like I said in my last tape, somebody should bring up the subject of money if you're just getting to know each other. But generally speaking, if a woman is going out with a man and it looks like it's going to be or has the potential to be romantic, one of the ways the woman can let the man know that she's in agreement with that is she lets him pay the bill. Now, does that mean that he always pays the bill? Well, maybe. It depends on if she's very poor and he's very wealthy, probably. But if they're in the same socioeconomic bracket somewhat, then I suggest to women that they not fight over the check at the table, but that they repay the person that they're interested in other ways. For instance, a woman can make a nice picnic lunch and invite the man to go on a picnic. Um, Invite him over to dinner and cook a nice dinner for him. It, but for sure, and this is really the point I'm trying to make, is if you do not have a romantic interest in someone you just meet, like in online dating, you should pay your own way. Because if you don't, I think you're conveying the wrong message. If you want to be friends, that's great. If you don't ever want to see the other person again, that's great too. But in both of those instances, you should be paying your own bill. Okay, so when you're together, when a couple is together, uh, well, when a couple is together, they generally don't fight about anything for the first year. But eventually, money becomes an issue, and it can be one of the biggest issues in a relationship. Um, there is. If you enter into a partnership, whether it's a marriage or you live together or you in some way combine your lives, you really need to talk about money. It does not work to just assume the other person loves you or you love the other person and you're together and it's all one big happy pot of money. Because people build up resentments. Oftentimes they won't say anything about it. In a marriage, if you don't sit down with your partner, or actually any kind of arrangement where you're sharing bills, if you don't sit down with your partner and then in 6 months your partner announces that uh, there's no money to pay this or that, you don't have anything to complain about, really. I mean, if you haven't been interested in paying the bills, you've given the other person uh, permission to take care of the bills and handle them in whatever way they see fit, and then suddenly you want to go, I don't know, on a golf holiday, and she says or he says, well, there's not enough money to do that. You don't get to, at that point, become irate and get very angry at the person who's been handling the bills. Both people should sit down and take a look at the bills. Both people should take a look at the checkbook or checkbooks. Both people should know what the other person is bringing in. I will say this, but very few of you will actually do it. If two people actually write out a budget, it will be so much easier. I say you won't do it because people don't think it's going to be a problem until it's a problem. But if in the very beginning of your relationship, your romantic relationship, you sat down and you talked about who makes what and who's going to pay for what, or and in some cases maybe the one person is going to stay home and be a homemaker and the other person is going to go to work, which brings up another interesting issue. How do you value someone in a relationship? Do you value them or yourself by the amount of money they make versus the amount of money you make? So that if you make a lot of money and the other person doesn't make very much money, but you both work 40 hours a week, does that mean that the other person has to do more household chores, or that you can look down your nose at your partner because you are the person that brings home more money? Or are you equal if you're both working 40 hours a week and there's an imbalance in how much money you're making, but you're both working? I think it's the latter, that if two people are working 40 hours a week or full time and they are doing their best at their job, I don't think it's okay to value that either person less because that person makes less money. They're working. And if you love your partner, which I'm assuming you do, or I hope you do, then you just need to figure the budget in a way that takes that into account. And it is not okay to act superior or expect the other person to do more work at home or any other punitive measure because you make more money. If you think about it, it's really not moral, because you're saying what you think your partner is worth versus what you think you're worth. It can cause some really deep-rooted problems. And then the other thing, and the last thing that I wanted to mention, there are many things to talk about regarding money, and I'm sure I'll make another tape, but this one is, once you make a budget, let's say you don't want to sit down and do a detailed budget. Okay, at the table some night you could get a piece of paper and write down the big items and who pays what or how that works. But what's important is that each person in a relationship needs to have some money that they don't have to account for, that they don't have to tell the other person what they spent that money on. Very often couples will agree on an amount that sometimes the couples will say, okay, anything over $100 has to be talked about between us before you spend that money. Or anything over $25 has to be talked about. It depends on how much money you have coming into the household. So you decide on what amount of money is not okay to spend without talking it over with your partner. And it doesn't matter what the amount is, just so there's that agreement. And then in addition to that, you really need to have, each of you needs to have some free money. Now, whether that's $10 a paycheck or $100 a paycheck or $500 a paycheck, it doesn't matter. What matters is you don't get caught up in that syndrome of what did you do with that money? Or you took $20 today and now you don't have any money, where is it? So if you've agreed on a certain amount of money, and sometimes somebody will say, will you please go to the store and get some milk? The other person will say, well, I don't have any money. And then the person says, well, what are you talking about? I saw $10 on your dresser. Of course you have money. You can see how unfair it is when I'm talking about it. You probably don't see how unfair it is when it's happening to you. So every paycheck, or however often you want to do it, decide how much money each of you can have. I'm assuming that would be based on how much money is coming into the household and what your bills look like. And then that money can be spent, and it's your money to spend. That money is not contributed to household money. So if you get $20 a week and that's your money, your partner can't ask you to stop by the store for milk and spend that money on milk unless they get that money back. That's personal money. That's a personal allowance. It makes people happier, and it's really not that hard to do because both people in a relationship want to have a little bit of freedom. They want to go to lunch with a friend or play a golf game or go swimming, whatever it is. They don't want to have to run to their partner every time they need $5 like they're 10 years old. So if you straighten things out about money from the very beginning, you will have a much, much happier relationship. And if you do get into trouble with money, solve the problem together. Get next to each other. Act like friends. Nobody did anything horrible to anybody else. Sometimes finances get out of control. Sometimes a couple needs to go to a financial counselor, but do it together. There's nothing productive is going to come out of squaring off against each other. You can blame and shame and yell and threaten and cry all you want. It is not going to solve your money problems. The only thing that's going to solve your money problems are the two of you understanding that you love each other and you don't need to blame each other. You want to get it fixed. That's enough for tonight, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.